Paulusma has previously been referred to as Britain's answer to Joni Mitchell. This is part one of an interview brought to you by Make a Difference with Records. We're based in Godalming and we raise funds from record sales to support the mental health charity Catalyst.
So my name's Anthony from Make a Difference with Records, and I'm here today with Polly Paulusma. Polly, thank you so much for taking the time out to meet us this afternoon. It's much appreciated. So Polly, it's been 20 years now since your first album came out, Scissors in My Pocket. Can you remember that sort of crazy period? Because it was a bit of a crazy period with the reaction it got. It was an amazing sort of snowball effect when it came out. Can you tell me what you remember about it?
I remember, loads about it. I wasn't that young when it happened. I was 28 when I made that album, or when it came out. And I think you're exaggerating it slightly. It wasn't. It had a much bigger positive reaction than I would have ever anticipated, hoped for, dreamed for.
Right.
For a little record that was made in a shed, essentially. I mean, that's what the PR said, but the reality was I had a day in a really grotty studio that all the jazzers used in London at that time.
Okay.
And I recorded the
Well,
drum.
up in Soho or somewhere?
It was in it was Poplar.
Oh, okay.
It was in an old abandoned swimming pool.
Oh, really?
And it was run by this genius engineer called John Wilkinson. And the jazzers that I was working with at the time, the bass player and the drummer, they'd been there for jazz projects before. Mm-hmm. So I knew about it. I knew it was reasonable. And so we rehearsed really hard and we did 17 songs in one day.
Wow.
Just them.
These days that would be unheard of course, wouldn't it? But...
I don't know. I think some people still work that fast. I mean, I wasn't recording myself. It wasn't the guitars and vocals. It was just them. But I really wanted to capture them performing together.
Oh, so you'd laid the vocal tracks down already?
No? They went in first.
Okay.
And I was doing guide vocals and stuff in the control room.
Yeah.
Some of them we kept, but most of it ended up in the bin. And I wasn't thinking about myself. I was just being there as a metronome really for them to play along to. But I then took those performances on hard drives home, and over the hot summer of 2003, the year before it came out, I was layering everything up very slowly, very privately. And it was a modus operandi that I really enjoyed because I didn't have a producer looking at their watch. I didn't have the studio engineer saying that's going to be another 25 quid or 40 quid or whatever.
You had the run of the place, basically.
I could just take my time, and if I needed to do it 56 times, I could,
Yeah.
So that was the shed part. All of that layering took place in the shed.
So had you already got the record deal then when you went into the studio, or did you self-finance that?
No, I was actually it was almost a reaction. The summer before, I'd been picked up by an American manager and flown out to LA and Sony, Columbia Records in New York. I'd been in the LA offices and the New York offices, and done that whole ghastly thing of standing, playing to a load of suits. It was just toe curling. It was awful. I mean, it was actually really interesting as an exercise as well. I learned a lot, but that corporate environment with all the beige furniture and these. It doesn't feel like a gig really, but you do your thing, and it had been a nearly but not quite with them, and I came back with my tail between my legs feeling very sorry for myself.
Yes.
And I've always been quite naughty, and I think I just was like, I'm not going to hang around waiting for some guy with a checkbook to give me permission to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
So the seedy, rat-infested jazz swimming pool studio and the shed combo was really my way of trying to make it what I could have. I could feel it in my head. I just needed to get it out.
Okay.
So, and literally, as I put the last note on the last bar, I signed my record deal with this British label that I've been with ever since.
And how did that come about? How did you get the record deal?
So there was another person who'd spotted me at a gig. It was all people had seen me playing in places, and all the times I sent stuff, nothing happened.
Right.
That was a real lesson. I learnt quite early on that it's quite hard to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
But if you find a champion, then suddenly doors start opening. And so there was this wonderful guy. A lot of the music makers in London at that time knew him. He was called Peter Whitehead.
Right.
And he would go to all the gigs, all the open mic nights. And he was a kind of scout, really.
Right.
He took my demo to Wonderland Indian, as it was then known.
Yes.
And he was the one that made it all happen. So he was in the mixing room with me, putting the on when we finally mixed Scissors. He was there because he was part of the story.
Yeah.
I was always so grateful to him. He had great ears, great ear. He spotted some amazing people. He was really good.
Tell me something, the material on Scissors, was some of it stuff you'd written quite a long time before, or was it all written around that time?
That's a good question.
The reason I ask you is it's got
Yeah.
a certain rawness to it, and I mean that in a complimentary way.
Yeah.
It's got a very kind of earthy almost feel to it, a very honest feel lyrically to it, and I just wondered whether that's something you'd written when you were younger, perhaps?
No.
No?
No. I was just thinking about it because I was gigging for 3 or 4 years in London before I made that record.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of earlier material that has now sort of sunk below the waves. There was
Yeah.
like probably at least another album's worth of stuff before. I've got old demos from that time, which I've made available to very small little exclusive groups like my Patreon group. They've got access to those early demos and stuff.
Okay.
But by the time I got to that angry summer of like, fuck the guys in the suits, I was writing stuff that was, I felt, I could just feel it because I was gigging so much. That was
Yeah.
part of it as well.
Yeah.
You started to get a real feel for the songs that were working. Like,
Right. Okay.
and so I was able to choose from quite a big pool of songs when it came to Scissors. I probably had about 40 or 45 songs that
Oh, really?
were
Wow.
in the
That's
running.
huge. Okay.
And actually, I've always had that. I try to maintain that. I think it's really
Yeah.
important to be able to choose.
Yeah.
But it was gigging that helped me select which ones I could see were making the jump from
Okay.
heart to heart. That's always the thing I'm after. I'm always after I think of it a bit like tuning forks, like sympathetic resonance.
I know of it. I couldn't explain it to anyone if they asked me, but
Okay, so you get 2 tuning forks off the same note.
yeah.
The way they work is that you bang them and then you put them on a table
Yes.
or a solid object,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and then they start to hum. The thing about sympathetic resonance is if you have a tuning fork of the same note and you just put it on the table, if you bang one and rest it, the other one starts ringing. It's so weird.
Okay.
The vibes kind of
Yeah.
pass through the air and set the other one off. And to my mind, that's such a good like visual or oral metaphor for what
Yeah.
happens when a song hits. You can see it. You can see that people are starting to quiver a bit. You can see it in their eye. If I can set that off, and it's not necessarily that they're feeling what I feel. It's just that I've reminded
There's a
them of
reaction.
what they feel.
There's a reaction.
Yeah, it's reminding them of something in them. It's not about me at all. It's about them. But it's that quiver. So if you can get that quiver going. So gigging material before making a record has been
Gave you an
past.
insight into what then would work on the album.
So those songs were
Okay.
the quiverers, I think. I kind
Okay.
of knew that I wanted to try and put them together.
So we don't have time to go through your entire sort of discography and discuss it in detail.
So old.
But if we look to the next one, Fingers and Thumbs,
Yeah.
it's quite different.
Yeah.
It's a lot. In fact, it's a lot different to Scissors. I mean, it's more like, I wouldn't call it a pop album, but it's more like, electric guitars, drums. It's not as stripped back. It was quite a departure stylistically from the first album. Was that you experimenting, or was that you?
It was a combination of lots of things, really. The main one was that I was in Portugal doing some gigs in record shops. And Neil Young came on the radio when we were driving from Porto to Lisbon.
Yes.
And I have never forgotten it. It was one of those moments it was like a Damascene moment. It was down by the river.
Right.
And I had to stop the car and we had to drive 20 miles back.
Okay.
to go to a record
You were
shop.
popular.
So, yeah. The tour manager was not happy with me on that day, but it was worth it. It was great. This was before Spotify and everything. It was
Yeah.
2005.
Yeah.
So just getting hit by a truck by Neil Young and the 70s, that sound.
Right.
Because at that time, my husband and I were trying to start a family and we were having a rash of miscarriages. I mean,
Okay.
my eldest child is on my medical notes, is my 5th pregnancy.
Right.
I had one miscarriage when I was in my teens, for which I was very, very grateful.
Yes.
Because that was a little bit of a mistake. But
Yeah.
the others were not. We were trying and not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And my life was pretty blood-soaked, to be honest. It was just like
Right.
it was a bit of carnage. That sound coming out of the radio sounded like I felt.
Right.
And so I just wanted to take on that musical emotion.
Right.
Felt like the place I needed to be to write those songs. So it was very much a kind of connecting influence moment. The songs, though, they were pulled out of me like splinters. And I think I got a bit caught in the headlights. I think I felt the pressure to write songs.
Why do you say that? Was the record label pushing you to produce things?
No, God, no. It's always me. I'm on my
So why did you feel under pressure then?
I don't know. I'd signed to Sony at that point. The publishing deal had kicked in.
Yeah.
And I then got pregnant. And so it was like, shit.
Yeah.
I've got to make another record before this baby drops.
Yeah.
And all those pressures, I think in hindsight, I think they probably put pressure. I was putting pressure on myself. And I didn't give myself enough time to really dig into what I was doing. So I listen back to it now and I'm super proud of that album. I love it. And I hear that distress that I was in.
Yeah.
But in another universe, I would have given myself another 2 years just to see where that would have gone musically. But there's some stuff on there that I adore. I got to work with Ken Nelson as well, which was extraordinary.
Right.
So I learnt a lot from an engineering point of view, being in that environment. The engineer head in me was squirreling away information. And
did that influence the way you put your songs together then, knowing what might be possible or not possible in the studio?
No. It was actually, a lot of it was recorded live, which was amazing.
Right.
Like a lovely freeing. It was a very freeing musical experience. It felt very freefall.
Yes.
I think Scissors had felt very constrained.
Right.
And there's a kind of mathematical beauty to it, which I love. But I kind of love the unhinged freedom of Fingers. They're kind of contrasty. So you're right. They're very different. And I think those circumstances surrounding them explain some of that.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the 4 albums, it almost felt to me like you'd started, obviously, with Scissors we talked about, and then you'd taken on almost a diversion, and then you'd come back a little bit. So with Family Tree and Pivot, it almost sounded like you were not coming back, because I'm not suggesting they're the same as Scissors, they're very different, but it almost felt like there was a core back again, a core running through your albums.
Yeah, I think I really hated my acoustic guitars after the end of Scissors. I'd done so much touring. I remember just looking at them going, I hate you, I don't want you, I don't want to see you. The release of being able to play an electric.
Yeah.
It was just so joyful to me, and I just needed to cleanse my palate somehow.
Yeah.
But after a couple of years of that, and then babies being born, and I kind of naturally, the compass needle kind of returned back to the acoustic. I just needed a break. We just needed a rest, me and Molly, my guitar. We just needed a little time off.
I mean, for me, labelling people in terms of genre is not very helpful, really, because people evolve and change and they try different things. But do you feel you have a spiritual core in one area rather than another?
No.
It's just whatever you feel at that given moment.
Yeah, I just have to go with the right.
In time.
I mean, when I know we're going to talk about the new album later, but it's such a hodgepodge of so many different things. And that's great. I love it for that. I love the fact that you can't really put it in a box.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your songwriting. I know that lyrics are important to you, obviously with your background and the degree in English, and I know you teach both English and music. Which comes first when you create your songs? Do you have a theme and an idea, or do you deal with the music? How does it develop?
There's no rule.
Yeah.
Some songs will come lyric first, and then I'll wrap a melody around. Some I'll have a little melody or a little guitar riff or something mooching about, and then the words will come. Sometimes they fall out together like a foal or something. You know, they just come together. But and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I can't say, oh, the really good ones. It's not like that. They're really bossy, and they just do what they're going to do. They're really,
because some artists are driven by observational things, aren't they, or experiences, and they experience something or see something, and that then inspires them to, I'd like to write about that. But
that happens sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's just not. It's unfortunately, it's not neat and tidy. It's really ramshackle and a bit annoying.
Yeah.
You can't really, you can't say, oh, this will happen. And there's nothing predictable about it. And sometimes I'll have, periods where I don't want to write at all, and sometimes I can't stop them coming. I mean, it's very odd. You have to be comfortable with.
I guess it would be very
unpredictability.
It'd be very dull if you had a formula, wouldn't it? Because it would almost feel like you're doing a job.
Do, and hats off to them. It would be much safer and easier if you were trying to make money, like, a money-making exercise. It would be great if it was formulaic and could be relied on.
Yes.
But I have to relax into it, you know.
One thing I just wanted to ask you before we kind of move on to other things is your albums. You've produced sister albums for the first 4, which amusingly or otherwise are anagrams of the. I'm talking about your solo material, not including the Angela Carter.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I think that's
So if I'm talking about your own songwriting, your 4 albums have had these sister albums which have had anagrams. Is that just something that's amusing, or is it basically a way of saying, well, these are just different expressions of the same material?
Exactly. It's different, just a different way of thinking, or a different version, or same shit, different shovel, or however you want to express it. It's like just showing that there's a connection. It's the same materiality of the connection is there, but they're different things. One sometimes, like with Scissors in My Pocket has Cosmic Rosy Spine Kites, and that the core of that is actually a gig that I was supporting Jamie Callum on a tour, and so we recorded a particular gig, and then the other 4 songs I had to think of a way to represent them, so I worked with a string quartet and we did a cappella versions of them, so that was really fun. It was lovely to do that. With the others, it's been more Fingers and Thumbs has Fights and Numbers, and I was extremely heavily pregnant, and I just rented a load of audio gear and I sat in my parents' house. They had this beautiful room that someone had told them when they first bought the house it was called the music room, but I'd naturally gravitated there without knowing that, because the acoustics were so incredible in there. And they only told me afterwards. But I recorded in there, and I just sat as fat as a house, and honestly I was ready to kind of surrender the spirit almost. It was like it was the last little thing I had to do before the album was done. And the baby was coming. But I got to record acoustic versions of all of those electric songs.
Okay.
And that was really lovely, actually. Because a lot of them had been written that way. I didn't necessarily write on the electric, so it was just showing where they'd emerged from.
Do you write mainly using guitar or a piano when you're composing?
It's mainly guitar, but only because of pragmatics.
Yes, yeah.
I would write more at the piano if I could.
Yeah.
But I don't really like writing on an electric piano. I really like to write at my real piano in the house. And for years, there's been children in bed, children asleep in the morning, children running around with sticky hands needing, and so the piano in the house is very hard. It's the real estate that's pricey. It's hard work for me to get there.
There's a real emotional pull, I think, about the piano. My daughter plays the piano, and she lives away now, but when she comes home and the piano is being played, it brings the whole house alive. It's amazing to make that emotional connection.
Yeah. It's lovely. So I would like to play more. Maybe in the future I'll be able to do a whole piano album or something, indulge myself when the children go to university, which is not far away. That might be something I can do I'll be so miserable. I'll get to be like, at least I can play the piano.
In terms of the lyrical side of your writing, you were once quoted as saying that unless people stamp their own interpretation on a song, the song dies. What did you mean by that? I've contradicted myself so many times on this that I don't know what I mean. I think what I feel is all I can do with that is think about what it's like for me listening to songs that I love by other people. Yes.
And how what matters, what makes that song mean so much to me is what it means to me. And if I find out what they meant, often it spoils it. I feel like it kind of withers, because I always feel that my interpretation can't be as valid as the author's or the composer's, which is completely wrong. And it's kind of how I feel about books and all sorts of things, actually. I just don't really care what Shakespeare intended by anything. All that matters is what I feel, because he's dead and I'm here with it. Or, any other examples you can choose. I'm really more interested in that, in the relationship between the artwork and the receiver.
Yes. I mean, it's almost like it's a living thing, I guess, isn't it, in some ways?
Yeah, massively. And I think you kind of you unanimate it if you pull out all the plugs, if you give away what it's all about. I'm trying not to, but sometimes it's hard.
Do you think that lyrical interplay and imagination, do you think that's getting more lost now with digital streaming, or do you think it's okay, it's no less valuable as a medium for that?
Well, I think it's all to do with attention.
Yeah.
So it depends on the receiver.
Okay.
On the person listening. If they are giving what they're listening to, their attention, then it doesn't matter what the medium is. But I do feel like phones and digital listening devices come hand in hand with a casual background while I'm doing 6 other things kind of way of consuming music.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I love about vinyl, and why I fought so hard for all of them to be on vinyl, I've nearly managed a full set, is about the attention of the receiver. It's about the act of what you do with your hands when you're putting a record on engenders attention. So that's all. It's not really about the medium per se. It's about the mode of the listener.
Yes.
Are you on or off, or standby, or
Yeah.
So.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, I think for me that's one of the reasons why vinyl has made a comeback. I think people feel they're making more of a connection, and it is more of an experience, and they're actually listening to the work as intended, as opposed to sliced up in convenient formats. But that's just a personal opinion. So.
One we share.
The songwriting side, a lot of artists that we've interviewed have said to me, look, it's so much easier to write sad songs than it is happy songs. Is that something you subscribe to or not?
Well, this is interesting. I don't really know what you mean by a sad song or a happy song, because all songs to me are innately happy and innately sad at the same time.
Okay.
And like even the saddest songs, you're loving it because they're so miserable. It's making you feel this melancholic, like that melancholy.
Yeah.
Thinking of Keats, there's pleasure in that agony. I mean, just as in happiness, there's a kind of undertow of it's going to end. It's only temporary. So I don't really, but so as I think we've discussed before, I'm bipolar, and my bipolarity is this thing called mixed features, where you are up and down at the same time.
Okay.
So maybe that's part of my brain.
Okay. So
I hear both at once all the time.
It's a coin that is in your hand and it's rotating and spinning or whatever it might be.
But it's both. It's always both. So the songs that I write, the saddest songs that I've written, some people don't even realise because the music is quite upbeat. There's that dissonance between the lyrical content, and so I quite like that. I quite like sneaking in real misery, like the doormat, without anyone noticing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I love them both, but I see them always, everywhere, always, all at once.
And to what extent? Let me put this question a different way. Why do you write music? What is it that really at your core? Why do you do what you do?
Well, because I started writing songs when I was 10, so it was really natural response. I honestly feel it's like, what the doctors do with a hammer? It's a reflex. It's it's my conversation that I enter into with the world. Like whenever I see anything, feel anything, do anything, it's a reflex, and it's a form of interrogation, really.
Right.
Of one's life. And it's always been like that for me. It's always diarised everything with a song all the way through my teens, and I don't really understand why everybody isn't doing it. It's really lovely. It helps you get stuff out. But the thing is that if that were all it would be, I would be writing them in my bedroom, and that would be it, right? They wouldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
There's this other thing. There's a secondary layer to it, which is the sympathetic resonance business.
Right.
That gets addictive when you've done it once, and you've done the magic trick of setting somebody going.
So that shared experience, if I can call it that.
It's more than that.
How would you describe it then?
To get really hippy dippy on it, I think there's this thing about meditation when you can go down through the layers to find there's something, I don't know what it is, I'm sure you have an understanding of how you feel it is. There's this kind of golden lake inside, which is everything. It's not just me, it's in everybody, it's in everything, and it makes you part of everything. And that quiver, it's like the golden lake. Mercury, did you ever break a thermometer as a kid?
Yeah.
You know how Mercury kind of rolls to itself?
Yeah.
It's that, you kind of feel like you're rolling into each other.
Okay.
And it's just a memory reminder of everything, of where we've come from. It's so profound. That's why I love playing live so much.
Okay.
I've got this tour next year that is like obscene amounts of dates. It's going to be exhausting.
Well, we're going to chat about that in a little while,
that
because
connecting thing is, and
yeah,
just the reminding that you're all one. Like when you can get that moment, it's so rare.
yeah.
But when it happens, it's just it's like why you're alive. It's great.
So you've just mentioned the touring side. Now you're starting at the end of February, because of course at the end of February next year your new album Wildfires is coming out.
Yep.
It's a triple album on vinyl, which thanks to the crowdfunding is now going to happen, which is fantastic.
Very kind people.
God bless crowdfunding. I think it's a wonderful thing that people do. Tell me a bit about Wildfires. Give me the background to it, and tell me more about it.
So, I was pootling along, writing songs randomly, just doing my morning pages, which is something I do all the time, kind of stream of consciousness writing, and just thinking, I do love to make things, but I didn't really have any grand project in mind. But I'd started writing some songs, but they were all like unfinished. I had a graveyard of sort of half-written songs.
Right.
And this was I was about to release Pivot, so there's always these long tails, right? Because albums get finished, and then there's this huge weight where you start to feel a bit kind of useless. But your album hasn't even come out yet, but that everything takes so long. It's like Heathrow flight paths, you need to get another one in the air because everything takes so long.
Yeah.
So Pivot came out and I went on tour. And my regular bass player, who I've worked with for 10 years, had done lots of work with. It was after lockdown. It was that craziness of tours being rebooked and booked.
Yeah.
He double booked himself. I was so angry with him. I mean, I love him, but I was so angry with him.
Yeah.
So he depped me out to his teacher, and so I got to tour with this new musician that I'd never worked with before, which is always good for a musical brain when you meet someone who plays in a different way. And so we had a lovely tour. It was great, and I had been starting to hatch this idea for an album involving spoken word, because I'd had one track on the previous album.
Bracklesham Bay is what you're talking about.
Thank you for knowing about that, yeah. And I'd really enjoyed
it's
the
beautiful
process.
song, by the way.
Thank you. It was a co-write with a novelist.
Right.
And that was part of it, I think. But the actual prose introduction that was there was actually mine. It had come out of some morning pages, and we'd used it as a tool to write the song. And when it had come to it, I realised that the tool that had been used to write the song was so part of it that I didn't want to separate them.
Okay.
And that got me thinking, what is prose? What is a song? How do we know what the difference is between them? And a lot of my other work has been about that, about prose and how we can hear songs in prose and stuff. I'm always interested in the interface between prose.
Well, they've both got a rhythm, haven't they? So
exactly. And there's a musicality to writers that I love. And there's a literary texture to the songs that I love. There's lots of imbrication between the two. So I was interested to that was a conscious decision. I really wanted to explore that. So I had this song that I had finished called Mary Louise. And I had a prologue, and I wanted him to, I thought, should I just give it to John and see what he does with it?
Yeah.
And he did. He just took it and made all these whale noises over it and made it totally beautiful. And then he played amazing bass all over the song as well. And I suddenly saw the potential.
Yeah.
Having done this kind of experiment with Bracklesham Bay, it was great. It was like a precursor in it. I could see how it might be fun to take bits and pieces of the writing that comes just before a song starts emerging.
Yes.
And think of the quicksand between the two states.
Okay.
And to demonstrate the whole thing and not just cut it off when the song starts.
Yeah.
To show the primordial soup that it kind of climbs out of, but in a musical way.
Mm-hmm.
So we started this long game of tennis.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened, but through that, there was about a 6-month period where I think it's because I had a new playmate. It was like I'm like a Labrador, with a stick. It was just like, they started coming and going, so I just ended up writing prolifically through this period and batting them to John, and John was sending them back with lovely stuff all over it, and it just got better and better and better.
Okay.
And I've never had that before. It was just so joyful, kind of sweaty, a bit frightening actually. Like I just couldn't stop. I was waking up at 5 every morning, and I know that my bipolarity was part of it, but I was kind of playing with it in a way, and just kind of taking it to the end of its leash. Probably went a bit over, but I'm medicated, so I was being responsible.
Yeah.
But I was aware of the curve, and playing with it a
Okay.
bit. And through that time, I also opened up a conversation with a producer, and this was a really random part of the whole happy journey. I fired this email into the night just after Christmas. You know that dead bit when everyone's asleep?
Yes. Yeah.
I sent this random email to LA.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most unlikely to return
Yeah.
thing. You
Yeah.
know the web form?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the
I
web
hate
form.
those because you think it will disappear in some
Yeah, exactly.
black
You
hole
expect
somewhere.
it, right? So
Your
it
call's
was the
important
management
to us.
company of this guy, and I just sent a random, very short, I'm doing this. It
Yeah.
involves spoken word.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really would love to work with
Yeah.
Ethan,
Yeah.
any chance, but
Yeah.
I basically forgot about it. And the next day, I got a reply saying
Yeah. Yeah.
which was very, it was really shocking because it's never happened before.
Okay.
So when things like that start happening, you start feeling there's some other
Planets are aligning.
something weird was going on. It was just, yeah. I mean, a profusion of songs, and then I met him, and then I played him everything, and then he fell apart and said,
This is Ethan Jones we're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
Ethan Johns.
It's Johns. I beg your pardon.
That's all right. Just for the record. Pardon the pun. So the songs, by the end of May, we had most of them, I'd say. A couple dribbled out over the summer.
Yeah.
John and I went to a house. We got some money to just try and get the prologues fixed because they were a bit unruly.
Right.
We did that. We rehearsed really hard. I rehearsed so hard.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't tell you what it was like because I knew from Ethan and talking to him, meeting him, he was going to record us live. And I was terrified. So I've told you the story of Scissors and how I did it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
My stuff was all throwaway, right? This time, no. I was going to have to not only play,
It was one
but
take.
sing.
Right.
With it was just like, what?
Okay.
Like they did in the old days,
Yeah. Yeah.
But Ethan's been schooled by his dad, Glenn Johns, who recorded the Beatles,
Okay.
Rolling Stones. I mean, has come up through royalty, and this was his.
That's
he
his
learned
method.
how
That's
to
his
do
methodology.
It. Yeah, and he was like, "No, this is the way to do it because this is the way you capture the magic," and he's bloody not wrong. It's amazing.
So how long were you in the studio for then?
5 days. We did 20 songs.
Wow.
But
okay.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were some overdubs that we did afterwards, just tiny little bits of mandolin and stuff. But the core performances are all from that time.
And the album itself, Wildfires, is it a themed album, a concept album, or is it a collection of individual things?
No, it's definitely got a story. Yeah, so there's part 1 and part 2. So I took him lots of songs because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I really expected him to pick 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever and say, this will be the record.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very happy for him to do that because I couldn't see the wood for the trees at all with it. I had all these songs and I'd been in such a fever writing everything. But he, could see the order, and it was like I gave him all my dirty socks and he just gave it back to me all folded and like, look, here it is. I was like, oh my God, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
But he also went to Derek Burkett, who's the label boss.
Right.
He said to Derek, I don't want to cut any of this. We're going to record all of them.
Okay.
And Derek, to his credit, said, okay, it's just amazing to have all that support.
Yeah.
Because obviously a longer album has financial implications.
Yes.
Such as a triple vinyl, for example.
Yeah.
So we had a big job to do in that studio to record all that material. So I rehearsed very, 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 very hard.
Yeah.
So that I could go in and just do it. But even then I didn't know if I would be able to, but it just kind of worked.
And the theme running through it is what?
And the theme running through it is, well, this is, you see, you're prying me, but
you don't need to tell us the exact story, but
I've given some of it away in the artwork, so
the artwork's beautiful, by the way. The photography is
lovely,
fantastic. Yeah.
We went up into the woods.
Yeah.
And Lena.
I'm a sucker for black and white photography anyway, so it's very
really
atmospheric.
special,
Yeah.
So when I originally was writing the songs that were all little broken bits of pottery,
Yeah.
I spotted a theme that I was writing one-way conversations. They were all, either it was a letter to God or it was to somebody who was dead.
Yeah.
And so the working title of it was Unopened Letters.
Ah.
But
okay.
the fury that fell out of me related to the fact that I had from that period, I was dealing with a thumping great big crush on someone.
Right.
That I couldn't act on.
Right.
For all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
And I just had to hold it in.
Yeah.
But I couldn't hold it in, and it came out in all these songs. It just leaked out of me.
Okay.
But I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing, and they just kept coming. So there's this arc of the album it's kind of different kinds of love, I think. It starts.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the opening song is almost like a prologue of its own, Paper Cathedral. It kind of sets up the whole thing so
that's actually the opening track then, because obviously it's just come out as a single a few days ago.
But that's the opener.
Okay.
But there's lots of different ways of looking at love. So there's love of dead children, there's love of my dead father pops up once or twice, and loving beyond the stars, and kind of that love that you can't reach. It's sort of out of reach love. All of it is, really.
Yeah.
But there's this middle section which is frankly just a massive romp. It's a massive love album to this anonymous person. And the part one sort of, it reaches its fever pitch at the end of part one, and at the beginning of part two, it starts to kind of unravel.
Mm-hmm.
I think the narrator becomes a bit unreliable. We start to question the mental health of the person.
Okay.
And it leads through right to the end to this love song from my husband, which is the Back to Earth with a bump. What is love really? When it really counts, it's not this fool's gold rubbish. It's this long burn, slow burn stuff.
That's a beautiful story. Beautiful story.
Yeah, it's been hard to live, but it
must have been exhausting emotionally to write it.
Yep.
Absolutely draining, I would have thought.
Yeah, it was a big old hot mess. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think when you're making things, you have to be feeling big stuff, I think.
Yeah.
In order to make so we'll see how it goes. We'll see if it makes the leap. But
the only thing I was struggling with was I was desperately trying to make a sensible anagram out of it. And
me too, and I haven't got there yet. Have you got anything?
Wilfred is all I got, or Fires Wild, which is cheating. It's just turning around.
Yeah, I might have to rethink the beautiful thing about this album is that the demos are amazing.
Okay.
Because they're me and John's back and forthness. There's this amazing paper trail of all the versions. So there's a lot of material for the sister album for this one. But I'm going to leave it a year or two because I just want the way it turned out with Ethan at the helm was just it was so different and so much better than I could have imagined. Like on my own, it's just been such a joy working with this person and with everybody. So the pianist on it is this chap called Neil Cowley, who's like a proper genius.
Right.
He hadn't heard anything. I mean, so John and I had been beavering away, being very due diligence and all this, being really ready. Neil turned up. He refused to listen to anything before.
Really? Like
on point of principle.
Okay.
So everything you hear when you do get to hear the full album is his initial response to. It's just like.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. He's just such a beautiful player.
Yes.
It's just been a wonderful experience. The whole thing has just been and whatever happens now is like gravy.
So you're going on tour at the end of February.
Yeah.
Are you going to be focusing on the new album then, or is it a real mix? What have you got planned?
I've got a plan. I know how annoying it is as a punter to go to a gig and like the band play all the new stuff. I really don't know. I know that's irritating. So what I'm planning to do is going to be like an evening with format.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a short set at the beginning, which is going to be all the old stuff.
Okay.
Which will be lovely and normal. And then there's going to be an interval.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to play one of the parts in full.
Okay.
Almost like a cinema thing.
Yeah. I'm
so excited. Got projectors. I'm going to have little sparkly trees. But there are 2 parts, so I'm going to alternate. Poor John.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to do quite a lot of rehearsing because there'll be 2 completely different nights.
So if people want to see the whole thing, they'll have to go to two different gigs.
And I've marked it up which one's part
smart.
1
That's
and which
smart.
one's part 2. And the opening's going to be different as well. I'll do different. I've got 6 albums now, so it's like there's a lot of stuff to choose from.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to do different openings so that if somebody does do this, take the chance to see 2 shows, they will get a completely different.
But you're doing something like 22 dates in a month. I mean, it's going to be absolutely knackering, isn't it?
I love touring so. I feel so happy when I'm on the road. I don't know what it is. I think maybe I've got some kind of Romany blood in me or something, but I just love it. I get so much good energy from it, and everything. Like my whole body feels better. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Like there's something about moving that it may be because I went to boarding school or something that I just need to keep moving, or I don't know what it is.
And it's going to be interesting. You talked earlier about well, I don't think you use this word, but the resonance, the emotional reaction, the connection with the audience, playing this, which has been a very raw and difficult experience live, and then getting that reaction, that's going to be something else, isn't it?
I'll see. I've been playing it. I went on tour just before I went into the studio with Ethan.
Yeah.
With Catherine Williams.
Yes.
And I actually played some of these songs then.
Yeah.
So I have been able to kind of road test them to a certain degree.
You were able to get through them okay?
Yeah. Interestingly, like I thought that would be a good thing to do, but actually one of the songs was it changed on tour. And when we went into the studio, I had to kind of unremember or unlearn it, get it, put it back.
Okay.
So it wasn't that helpful to have toured it because it started morphing, which is like that living thing business. Songs do that on the road as well. They start moving around, which is nice. They kind of have a life of their own.
And do you prefer the small intimate venues? Because you've played some very big venues historically. You did Glastonbury. You've toured with Dylan, Coldplay, Callum, to name a few.
I love it. I love them both. I really do. There's advantages and disadvantages to both.
Okay.
I do like being able to see people's faces and like being able to put it in your lap is quite a nice.
Because some people don't. Some people just like to see a sea and they can't make that connection.
Yeah,
but
it's a different experience, I guess.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah.
Very different. And in terms of the album itself, so it's coming out at the end of February. If people are watching this and want to know how to get hold of it,
come to a show and buy it from me directly. That's the best way.
Yeah.
But failing that, you can go to Bandcamp.
Yeah.
The one little independent website, Ollie Records.
Yeah.
Will be selling it. It should be in record shops. If you can't find it in an independent record shop, please ask for it because they can get it in.
Yeah.
But it will be being distributed, so it'll be in shops.
And on vinyl, as we were saying earlier.
So it's available digitally. It's on a double CD, which is really beautiful, which I have seen, and it's on a triple vinyl LP, which is waiting for me at home, and I haven't seen it yet. I'm itching to get home, so I can open it.
It's literally there today, is it?
Neil got his yesterday. Ethan's got his today. John's, I think it's been delivered yesterday, but he's on tour, so he won't see it. But yeah, I'm going to be the bloody last person. The studio engineers opened it and said it's nice. So I'm just like...
I'm very privileged you're even here today in that case.
So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, listen, it's very exciting to know that it's coming out. We've had a bit of a taster with Paper Cathedral, which is a lovely, lovely track.
Thank you.
And leaves... as we were discussing, I think earlier, leaves a bit to the imagination lyrically, which I think is always good for a song, lets people take it in whatever direction they want. So
yeah, there'll be another 3 singles as well before the album comes out. So
okay, in digital format only, I assume, or not?
Yeah, they're always digital.
Yeah,
I've made videos for all of them though.
Excellent.
I've just finished the last one, so actually there's 5. I'm making videos for all of them, so you'll be able to watch it as a movie. Including the prologues and the prose bits? Everything, oh yeah. Fantastic. Prologues are part of it. Okay. Yeah. So we can expect a DVD at some point then? Maybe. They're all on YouTube, so... Excellent. That's probably the way it'll be. All right. Great. Well listen, probably thank you for now. We will be talking again when the album comes out. Brilliant. And discussing it in more detail, which I can't wait. But for now, thank you so much. Thanks so much. That was part 1 of a 2-part interview with Polly Paulusma. You can find out more about us at makeadifferencewithrecords.com, or even better, come and see us at our store in Queen Street, Godalming.